Welcome to the FARcast here at Chadron State College, where we're talking to interesting people from the college and hopefully beyond as we get to future episodes. I'm Daniel Binkard with my co-host Alex Helmbrecht here, and we're talking to Dr. Josh Ellis from the Family and Consumer Science Department. Family and Consumer Sciences Department. I want to make sure I get that right. Yep. And you're an associate professor over there. How many years have you been here at Chadron?
This is my 6th year here.
All right. So. And where were you at before? Give us kind of a breakdown of your life leading up to Chadron State College.
Well, I went to undergrad at Northern State University in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Did my undergrad and graduate work there. And then I worked at National American University in Rapid City for about 10 years. I was the program director for the athletic training education program. Then when they phased that out, I had to find something else to do. So I worked as an ergonomics for an occupational medicine group. I would go around and watch people work and try and help them work safer. I hated that job, but I did that for about 3 years. It was, just the people, the management, usually they were bringing me in because they had had an accident on work. So they didn't want me there. And then the workers were afraid that I was going to put some regulations into place where it would take their job away. So it was not a pleasant job. So I did that for a few years. And I've also done outreach for athletic training. I'm a certified athletic trainer, so I've done outreach for high schools. Also do some personal training. I've done some of that. And then when the job opened up here, I applied and got in here and enjoyed every bit of it. So every day I walk on campus, I smile. Well, every day now that I step out of my dorm room, I smile when I see the campus. So it's been a very, very good change for me.
That's right. You are faculty in residence. Is that correct?
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about that. What's going on there?
Yeah, a few years ago, we had the Strategic Enrollment Management team kind of gathered some information from students about what they'd like to see. And I remember they had a list, and there was faculty in the dorms was on the list, and Alex was sitting next to me, and he pointed to it, and we both went, "That's a horrible idea." And who would want to do that? And then sure enough, about a month or two later, David Kendrick approached me and thought that I would be a good candidate since my family lives in Rapid City and I was living here. So he kind of asked, if I would be interested in it, and said yeah right away. But then over the course of the summer, I just kept second guessing. I just wanted to call David and say, I don't want to do this. So I was afraid I would lose too much my free time, basically, which hasn't happened. So I had a lot of reservations, but then finally I decided to give it a go. So last year was a pilot, and this year Austin decided to try it again, so it's going well.
Great.
So I just put on monthly programming, and then I'm available in the lobby of Edna for usually about 2 nights a week. I'll hang out there. And the idea was to kind of bring faculty to the students, especially first year students. It kind of helps them put a human face on faculty and realize that we're not that scary and easily approachable. And so more of a resource for the students is kind of what the intention was.
How successful has that been with regard to student interaction? Are they coming to you?
Yeah, I get a lot of interaction there, and then also in the cafeteria. Probably get most of my interaction over at the PAC when you're lifting weights and things like that. I guess when everybody's wearing shorts, I guess it makes it more approachable. I don't know what it is, but it seems like it's more approachable over there. We're all hanging out, watch. And it's interesting to kind of eavesdrop on the bro science that's floating around the weight room all the time. So then I can bring it up in class. So
that is a good connection.
Bro science, you got to elaborate on that.
Yeah, bro science is basically when the guy with the biggest arms in a gym has got people standing all around him, and he's preaching about how he got the biggest arms in the gym.
The Aristotle of the weight room.
Yeah. Or if you got the thickest hair, how did you get that? I'm like, well, that's not me giving that talk. But so it's just fun to eavesdrop on them. They'll be talking about the program that they're following or nutrition that they're following, and some of their facts that they're spouting off about, and it's just fun listening to them. And I never confront them and say, "Yeah, no, I don't want to be that guy," but it's just fun listening to them. So,
so is it true Edna's haunted?
I think towards the last few weeks of every semester, it seems to be haunted by some kind of pale-looking students that are shuffling around the halls.
Oh, yeah.
Other than that, I haven't experienced anything out of the ordinary. It's quiet. That's my last year at the pilot program. The first 3 weeks, I thought I was the only person on third floor. I'd look out my door because I was used to the dorms that I went to school in, where it was just chaos, for sun up to sundown, but they're pretty quiet. And I knew it was going to be a little bit different experience when the World Series was on last year, and I had the big screen all to myself, so nobody was biting for space on the big screen. So, but no, it's nice. It's more like a motel than it's just nice, comfortable. Probably the biggest takeaway I've had from that program is just seeing how well Chadron takes care of their students. I mean, it's just, I don't see them wanting of anything, and takes very good care of them. They're safe. They have access to good food and workout facilities, and Sea Hill's a nice place to hike, and so very well taken care of.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah. I know I've found out that I don't leave campus hardly at all when I get here during the week now, so it's easy. I see it as my little town. It's kind of like...
Well, one of the things you mentioned is the eating in the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
Do students get recommendations for food or talk to you about the nutrition of the food over there?
Sometimes. And the biggest thing is that it helps me get an idea of what they're eating there. So in class, when they complain about not being able to eat healthy, I can set them straight and say, wow, you could eat this or that. And so it's, and a lot of times when they sit down and eat with me over there, it's just to visit. And I think last year I had maybe 3 students that sat down. I don't go sit with students that are sitting by themselves because like maybe they want to eat by themselves. It's nothing wrong with eating by yourself. Yeah. But if they approach me to sit with me, I've had, like I said, last year about 3. This year so far I've had 2 people that have came and sat down with me or invited me to sit with them at their table. So, and I think it's a little bit, they're less guarded when you're sitting around a table eating food. And I know sometimes they can be a little bit apprehensive when they know you teach nutrition. They're afraid you're going to judge everything on their plate, which I never would, externally anyway. You're always. I'm not going to shame anybody for as long as I always tell them if I see you in Walmart with a cart full of Twinkies, I'm not going to judge you. But
So it says here you are into hiking, biking, running, rock hunting, woodworking, and Irish music. Let's talk about woodworking. Okay. What sort of woodworking do you do?
I like taking old barn wood or just old wood and repurposing it as I have a log cabin that me and a buddy built in Montana, and the whole interior is outfitted with the tables, the countertops, everything was built from old barn wood. So just giving old wood new purpose. So now everywhere I look in the cabin, I can, I see things that I've made from an old barn that I collected wood from where my parents live up in North Dakota, and there's just nothing that compares to the way old wood looks. I mean, it's beautiful. When you start sanding it, some of the colors and the textures come out of it, and you think of all the people that, I have a ladder at the cabin that I took from an old barn in North Dakota that used to lead up to the hayloft in that barn. So I always think, how many people scurried up and down this ladder in the 100 years that it was in that barn. So now I scurry up and down it up to the loft in our cabin.
That's great.
Yeah, it's just nice to have some meaning behind everything, I guess. So that's probably the main thing I use it for, is just find old wood and turn it into something.
Now, what sort of tools are you using? Are you a power tool guy or a hand tool guy?
I prefer hand tools. Just like sanding, I'll generally use power tools, but I lean more towards hand tools. Working on the cabin, we did almost all of that, other than the chainsaw work, by hand. So I have a couple of my grandfather. One of my grandfathers was big into woodworking, so he had all the hand planers and the bit and the drills and all that. So I have some of his tools, which I like to use those too, because it's kind of, my grandpa held these same tools, so it's kind of nice you see the worn grips on them. It's the same thing with rocking chairs. I have a thing with wooden rocking chairs, it's just, the handles are worn by all the people that have sat in them. And so I guess I'm a bit too nostalgic when it comes to some of those things, but
that can be fun. So is this a lifelong hobby, passion for you?
Yeah, I started working with wood, just watching my grandfather when I was like 10 or so. I'd go over and watch him he had a small shop in his garage, and I would just hang out and watch him work with wood, and it was just interesting. He kind of did the same thing. He built their entire house off of reclaimed lumber from houses that they tore down in the area, and my dad remembers having to hammer nails out of lumber so that my grandpa could use it to build a house. And as a kid, he said it was miserable, you're recycling all of it. But it was just amazing to see a pile of lumber, what my grandpa, he would see something in a magazine, like a chair, and then he would go build it. It was always neat, I thought, to be able to bring something like that into existence. I like to build useful things like chairs, which I'm always working on the chair design. And I like building out of wood because if it turns out crap, you can just burn it. So,
or
no evidence.
Reclaim the wood.
yeah,
You know?
try something else. Yeah. So, but yeah, that was kind of where it got started. Just watching my grandpa and my dad both. They worked together to build our house when I was a kid. So just watching them always building something was always getting added on. Because the house I grew up in was like a 100-year-old farmhouse, and they'd gradually added on rooms around it. Then it burned down, but had a good run.
That's good.
Yeah.
You ever had any hairy situations trying to reclaim wood from a barn?
No, I always get permission first.
Okay.
That's something the bulk of my wood came from one barn in North Dakota, and my dad knew the owners, and so I asked the guy if I could take any lumber from it. And he said, "You can take the whole barn if you want it," and because the roof was starting to cave in. And when I went inside of it, there was stables full of tongue and groove lumber that they had just stored in there. It was just wood. Those beams were just massive beams in there, so it was kind of fun to go in and just cut some of those out and take them back and clean them. I usually use like a planer and plane them down a little bit, and then like the kitchen cabinets at the cabin, I put like 6 layers of lacquer on them so that they're protected. And I try and keep it as natural color as possible, just because nothing worse than seeing wood that's been painted. So
Yeah.
it makes you sick.
Some of that wood, though, I've been amazed. It's pricey. You could make like a mantelpiece out of some piece of the barn. It goes for thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that guy. That's why I asked the guy, because I know you can sell that wood for so much, but he had no interest in selling it. And he just said, "Take what you want." So I loaded up a huge flatbed full of barn wood and hauled it back to South Dakota and went to work on it. So I don't know how much lead-based paint I inhaled, but
They're still
it's
here.
all part of the experience.
Is that part of the ketosis diet?
Yeah.
Lead-based paint.
Oh, boy. Tell us about Foom. It's kind of a lead off of the dining with students in the cafeteria. And I see this email every other Monday.
Yeah.
What's Foom?
I started it about 3 years ago. It's the Fellowship of Odd Mondays. And so every odd dated Monday, I send out an all CSE email just to meet in the cafeteria if you have the time, if you want to. And so when I first came here, the first 3 years I was here, I just ate by myself over in Burkeiser. We have a kitchen over there, so I would just eat over there by myself all the time, but it got kind of boring. And it's fun to interact with everybody on campus. I enjoy learning about where they came from, their backgrounds, and so I thought that'd be a good way to maybe see who would show up. First few I sent out, I was worried that I was going to get in trouble for sending an all-campus email without consulting anybody first. So, but I've never had any issue with it. And usually it's about the same 6 to 8 people that kind of show up. A few different ones will filter in now and then, but it's kind of fun. Like today was Foom Day, but I wasn't able to be there, but because I had a meeting at noon. But I still send out the Foom email, and whoever's there is there. So
You're the unofficial chair of Foom.
yeah, they don't have to wait till I arrive to eat or anything. So.
Well, I think you're kind of known on campus for reply all emails because of the softball one that came out a few years ago.
Yeah, that one, I was in tears in my office. I was laughing so hard. That was another one where I thought I was going to get in trouble so I sent out an email after it when people started replying all. I sent out, "Please do not reply all." And then I think it was Catherine Barr said, no, these are great.
Yeah, keep them going. Yeah.
Because I was afraid the next email was going to be from the president telling me, "Knock it off. I need to see you in my office," because I was my first semester here. And so, it was for a co-ed softball tournament that they were having.
Was it students versus faculty or students versus staff?
Yeah, we got routed bad. The only thing I was concerned about was that somebody was going to get hurt when I showed up. And we're all standing there, and we didn't look like a softball. Well, we looked like a softball team, but we didn't look like an athletic softball team. But
a good one.
But the students started rolling in. They got their shirt sleeves ripped off, and they look like athletes. I'm like, oh God, we're gonna get killed. And I was just concerned somebody was gonna take one in the teeth that was pitching or playing third base. And so Bob Knight played third base. He was over there in jeans and a button-up short sleeve shirt. He blocked everything that got through him. Got over there, and he did a great job. And Dean Tucker pitched a little bit. But the reply alls were because I asked, "Tell me why you should be a part of this team." So a lot of them took it as an opportunity to have like a verbal tryout, and some of them were just hilarious.
Yeah.
Dean Tucker's, I was in tears in my office.
That was fantastic.
Recalling his youth being shunned and picked last. But yeah, I was in tears in my office just laughing at those. So
that was my first introduction to you. I was like, who is Josh Ellis? Is this like the purveyor of softball? What is going on?
Was that before or after you did your Graves presentation on nutritional ketosis?
I think it was before, I
Okay.
believe. Yeah, was that in?
I forget now what the time, because I knew who you were at that time, and I
might
want to
have
say
been after, because
okay.
I think we had the softball tournament was in the spring, because I think they used to do that tournament every spring. Yeah, and I think I did the Graves lecture in the fall when I first came. So
yeah, Josh owns the record for most
Yeah,
views.
I
Doesn't
have
he?
to check the numbers again. I'm pretty sure your video still has the most views of anyone on our channel, which is good. It's a good
high
subject.
praise. That's high praise.
yeah, it's an interesting topic, and it's real. I was kind of on the front end of it. I guess now it's just blowing up all over the place. And I stumbled onto it completely by accident because when I first came here 6 years ago, one of the students, I was teaching nutrition for sport, and we were talking about carb loading one day which I ran marathon and things like that. And so we were talking about how to carb load, and a student brought up fat loading. He said, well, could you fat load? I'm like, that sounds ridiculous, but I'll give it a shot. So I started Googling, fat loading, and ketogenic diet popped up. So I told the students that I would try it for a month and just tell them how big of a failure it is, that you can't compete, you can't lift weights, you can't be active. And 6 years later, I'm still on it. So, I mean, it works for me. I understand it doesn't work. Nothing works. There is no one size fits all for diets, but it worked great for me. The biggest thing I noticed was just the cognitive clarity. I felt like I was much clearer mentally. Because before, when I was more carb-based, it was like every 2 hours I had to eat something or I'd get hangry. So, you'd eat breakfast at 7, then be rummaging through your desk drawer at 8 or 9 for a bar or something like that.
Right.
So, yeah, it just seems like I got a more steady state of energy and just much clearer cognitively. I don't have to be standing in front of the podium with lecture notes. It just seems like everything just flows so much better. But
And what's the elevator speech on a ketogenic diet?
pretty much it's high fat, so generally 75-80% of your daily caloric intake comes from fat, and then about 15% from protein, and then about 5% from carbohydrates. And so it's high fat, moderate protein, and low carbohydrate. And the carbohydrate sources should be your fruits and vegetables mainly that you're getting that from. So, and sometimes it takes about 6 weeks for someone to get fully into what they call ketosis, which it's the only diet that you can actually measure a biomarker on, that you can measure how many ketones you have in your blood. By you prick your finger just like you would when you measure your glucose for diabetes, and it'll tell you. Generally, it's considered to be in ketosis when your blood ketones are over about 0.5 to 1 millimolars. So it's one of those few diets where you can actually look at a biomarker and say, oh yeah, I'm in ketosis. And I don't check my blood anymore. I mean, I'm not as strict. When I first started, I was very strict just because I was on the experimental side of it, just seeing what effect it would have. And I enjoy it. Like I said, I can continue to do it now, and I think it's a pretty easy way to eat for me because I'm not hungry. Like if I missed lunch, I'd be fine till supper. So I feel like I'm less tied to food, whereas before it was like every 2 hours I had to be hunting something down, or I was just.
See, I did the Whole30 with my wife a couple of years ago, which I think is kind of similar to ketosis. You don't have legumes or dairy products, things like that. And I was always hungry, and I ate probably 5 pounds of almonds in 30 days, and plantain chips, and just like these weird things that you would normally never eat, but I began craving them.
Well, the high fat helps with this higher amount of fat, and then the protein. So I mean, everything you're eating tastes great, and it's things that we were told we weren't supposed to eat for the last 40 or 50 years. And I think the paradigm is finally shifting on. Butter is not going to kill you, and things like that.
Yeah.
The saturated fat is a big thing that. The science everything was low fat, no fat back in the 80s is kind of when that started. And so I always tell my students it was a miserable time to be a kid because all the moms were cranky and pissed off because they were not eating it.
Well, I think it's good to be intentional about what you're eating.
Oh, yeah.
Give us a sample, Josh. During a normal week, what are the types of foods that you have day to day?
Like in the morning, I was never a big breakfast eater, but in the morning I have what they call fatty coffee or bulletproof coffee. So I'll have coffee with butter, heavy whipping cream, and coconut oil in it. And if I just drank that for breakfast, I'd be good for the rest of the day. I don't have.
Yeah, that sounds pretty.
Yeah.
A cup of oil with a dollop of coffee.
It's about a 500-calorie cup of coffee, and about 90% of it is fat. So I mean, I could be just fine. And when I first started the diet, that was a problem. I was so satiated that I would skip lunch because I just wasn't hungry, and then I would just eat like one real meal a day. And I wasn't doing it to lose weight, but I went from 165 down to like 148. And my wife told me I look like hell, and so I started squeezing in a lunch meal because I just needed to maintain the weight that I needed to maintain. And so now for like lunch, I'll eat generally some greens with a lot of olive oil. I use a lot of olive oil on the greens with some sort of protein source, like chicken or beef or pork or anything like that. So usually for lunch, I'll have just like if I'm at home, we'll have leftover steak or something. I'll just chop that up and throw it on on a salad, or eat a lot of omelets with bacon or steak, whatever meat we have left over. I'll put it in an omelet, so I make lots of omelets. And then generally for supper is some sort of protein source, like beef or steak, beef, pork, or chicken or something like that. But so generally 2 real meals a day. Like I said, I could get by with just one, but it's hard to maintain the appropriate amount of weight that I need. About makes my wife want to slap me when I have to eat an extra meal to maintain my weight. But
so if Daniel and I would have brought a plate of cookies in here today and set them on the table, you wouldn't have touched them.
I'd probably have one. My wife makes great chocolate chip cookies and great banana bread, so I'm not gonna not eat hot banana bread right out of the oven. And,
oh, no way.
Or the cookie dough. I don't mind the cookie dough. I'd be more tempted for than the actual cookies. So my wife will always save me some cookie dough when she's making chocolate chip cookies, and that's what I tell the students. It's important to have some balance, and because they call that what is it, orthorexia, when you basically the way you eat ruins your life because you can't go to a birthday party and nobody will probably invite you because you're going to swat cookies out of people's hands all day long. So you become that annoying person but you can't go to anywhere because you're always concerned about, well, are they going to have anything for me to eat at that restaurant? And so it's important to be able to let go and just eat, because I mean, eating is such a important part of our lives, just kind of the way we get together socially, and so you don't want to ruin that by not being able to partake in that portion of life. So, and I think when I first started, I was a lot more on that annoying side, but I've kind of backed off away from that to more of a moderate approach to it, and so.
And is it easy to do your diet at the cafeteria?
Yep. Yeah, I haven't had any problems there. Like for lunch, the salad, just use my fat source generally at lunch is probably more olive oil than anything else. But they have good selection of protein, a lot of chicken, and this year we've had some good beef too. So, and at home we buy our beef from my wife's hairdresser's husband. I know that sounds weird, but she doesn't get her hair done at a meat locker. But her hairdresser's husband raises cattle, so we always buy beef from him. And then Teresa Frink's husband, E.J. Frink, he raises pigs, so we get a hog from him. So, and we get our eggs from people we know. So it's kind of nice just to know the source of your food.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's amazing how much different it tastes. And
yep.
It always was crazy to me that you'd go to the store here and you'd see beef that was from Brazil. It's like, there's cows all around. Do we really need to ship something all the way?
Yeah, that is something.
But
Josh, if you weren't teaching, what would you be doing?
Probably bartending. I like bartending. When I was in college, I bartended for a few years, and it was just fun. You got to visit with people, and then when you got to the point where you didn't want to visit with them, you just wander off and act like you were busy. But as a bartender, you always had control of the TVs, and you always had the control of the drinks. So nobody ever wants to upset the bartender because he might ask you to leave or ignore you. Or so I think I bartended 2 or 3 years in college, and like I said, it was just fun. You're up moving around, and but yet you have your space. I never want to be a server. I mean, that's like the Wild West out there. My daughter and my wife have both been servers, and I don't know how they do it. I mean, I like being behind the bar and just more of a controlled environment, I
Now,
guess.
were you like in the Tom Cruise cocktail mode, or
We did try some. So that was the 1994, I think, is when I started.
Oh yeah, that was probably big back then.
Yeah, I tried the spinning the vodka bottles one time, and vodka went in my eye. And that was you don't look very cool behind the bar when you've got tears running out of one eye and vodka on the side of your face, and so that was the end of the Tom Cruise. What was the name of that movie? Cocktail. Yeah. So no, I enjoy bartending. So
What type of bar would you want to work in? Describe it for us.
I think I like being a bar that kind of specializes in cocktails. My daughter came home to live with us over the summer, and I always break out the shaker at about 6 o'clock. Me and my wife have cocktail hour now because we're empty nesters. But my daughter's like, "Is this what you guys do now?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Why not?
So we make Manhattans and all those types of fancy drinks. I think I'd like to bartend in a place that made cocktails and maybe had sold cigars. I like to have a cigar once in a while, but I wouldn't want to be in the haze of it. But to maybe have a section of it where you could have cigars, cocktails, of course, a little Guinness. Yeah,
I was going to say, I'd peg you to be in an Irish pub so you could sing those folk songs.
That's right. That was the most amazing thing when we were in Ireland. Is just you'd be standing there and all of a sudden a song would start. Somebody'd start singing, and everybody in the bar would just shut up and listen. And then when the song was over, everybody would go right back to their conversation. First time it happened, I was like, "What just happened here?" And it was beautiful. I mean, somebody would just start singing, and everybody would just listen. And everybody there knows the same songs because these songs are hundreds of years old. So. That was my whole intent of going to Ireland, was just listen to music, travel around the country, and listen to music, and I wasn't disappointed. So
that's awesome. So what are you mentioned woodworking. What are some other interests outside of your profession?
I like playing. I started messing around with guitar when I was in graduate school. My parents bought me a guitar for my graduate school graduation. And so I've gradually been kind of teaching myself over the last 20 years how to. So that's one thing and just this past year, my brother challenged me to play in public. So I started going to open mics just to appease my brother. And it was, the first few times was horrible. I mean, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely even play the guitar, and it felt like my tongue was twice the size of my head. And but it's one of those things. I'm glad he challenged me to do it, because now it's not that bad anymore. I'll go out and do it. But so guitar, I like biking, hiking. Like I said, rock hunting is fun. Especially the specific rock I'm generally looking for is the Fairburn agates, which are specific to this area.
How old are those?
Most of those are like, is it 60 million years old, they figure? So that most of them washed out of like the Black Hills back millions of years ago, and then just have ended up, like there's some over by Crawford. You can find some over there, and kind of stretching from Crawford all the way to the middle of the Black Hills, basically. So I got into that a few years back. A buddy of mine was a rock hunter, and I thought it was stupid. You'd walk around looking at your feet. I was like, I like to enjoy the scenery. And then I found a Fairburn agate, and I was hooked. So it's like, but I've been doing it for maybe 5 or 6 years, and I've only found maybe 5 or 6 Fairburns. They're hard to find. So.
That's just an excuse. More fresh air, more
you get
hiking.
to go out. Yeah. So it's fun to go out and just walk for a while and then look for a while. And I thought I could train my dog maybe to find them, but he just likes to bomb around the place and play in the swamp. But nobody else in my family enjoys it. I make them go out for Father's Day to rock hunt with me, and it's miserable for them, but it's my right as a father.
Yeah, you get one day a year.
Well, I figure when the kids were little, we'd end up doing for Father's Day whatever it is they thought you wanted to do, which was go to the park or,
Of course.
So now I can do it, make them do what I think I want to do.
Payback.
Yeah. So, yeah.
One of those other outside interests also is kind of, I guess, would be an inside interest, Zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance. You teach about it, but yet you also kind of have a personal connection too. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the book, I started using it for the capstone, I think it was about 3 years ago, because the whole title is Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, Inquiry into Values. And so I saw the capstone as an inquiry into values, basically, that I'm having the students look back over their last 4 years or so of college and trying to put it all together and see what kind of value they've got out of that. And so that was kind of the premise. And I think it's a good introduction to philosophy. I'm not a philosopher, I'm not an English major or anything like that, but it's just one of those books that every time I read it, it's one of those books that I'll just drop on the couch or wherever I'm sitting, and just because it just blows your mind. Some of the things that he says is just very deep and profound, and he's a very good writer. I like his second book, Lila, I didn't care so much about, but and it's just an interesting book that I think most of the students can relate to. So I have them read each chapter. They have to pick out their favorite quote and then tell me how that quote relates to them personally. And I realized that they could just flip it open and pick a first sentence they see and write. But I think the majority of them, just from what I gather from class, they're actually reading it and enjoying it. And it came out in 1974, so it's been around for a while. And most of them, it's a book that they probably never would read if it wasn't assigned to them in a class. So,
what's your favorite quote?
I like the one. Was it to live life only for a certain goal is shallow, or was it something regarding life is sustained on the sides of the mountains, not the top? Something like that. I can't remember it word for word, but
sure.
But the gist of it is that you enjoy life, basically. That just keeping your eye on one goal of making, you want to become a millionaire or something like that. That you'll miss out on a lot of other things. So, but I think it's got a lot of good life lessons in it, and it's basically a guy that goes on a motorcycle trip with his 12-year-old son from Minneapolis to the West Coast, and it's kind of along the way, the person that he used to be and was medically forced to stop being starts to show up again, and there's kind of a conflict between who he's become and who he used to be, and so the book is kind of that playing out of that conflict, and so it's interesting. So I think we all have some sort of conflict like that, who we used to be and who we are, and where we're headed. So, no, it's an interesting book.
And you actually sought out the author's office, didn't you?
Yeah, he was an English professor at Montana State. My daughter was going to Montana State, so I took my copy of the book and sought out his office to get my picture taken in front of it. I'm sure I'm not the only person that's done that, but it felt kind of weird stalking through, and because it's an administrative office now, it's not the humanities department or anything. So I think his office is actually a big janitorial closet now. But so I went and stood in front of it with my book, and my wife took my picture. And
was there anything saying this is Robert Persig's office?
No, there's nothing there. That he just passed away about 2 years ago, and he'd spoken on campus several times, but he actually never. I think he only worked there like 2 years, and that's where he went insane because he was looking for what quality means. That's the question that drove him insane, searching for what does quality and value mean, and he basically just lost it. And he's very intelligent, but he's very much in his own head. He basically went insane, and they did electrical shock treatment on him like they used to do back then, where they put the rubber wedge in your mouth and put the electrodes on the side of your head and basically zap the demons out of them, or so they thought. I think it's a happy story.
Yeah, that is. Talking about offices, college relations maybe needs to work on something where this is the office of Daniel Binkard from 2000 to present.
That's what I thought. When I moved into Burkheiser, I thought that'd be neat to have outside the office a list of each faculty member that had been in that office.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be kind of neat to kind of know, what you're getting into, who had this office before me. And I know Burkheiser is one of the newer ones, but like old admin, and when I walk through the halls of Edna, when I'm walking up the steps of Edna, I always think, how many students have walked up and down these steps since this place opened?
From 1932.
Yeah, it's just amazing to think of all the different people and where they are now, and what they became and what they'd hoped to become, and how many of them actually became that. It's just
absolutely.
It's just fun to think of those things. So I think it'd be cool to have each office kind of have a who was here kind of a plaque or something.
Sure get some variety. I think that building has been a residence hall the entire time.
Yeah.
It's had other pieces in it, but
Yeah.
there's always been people living there.
Mm-hmm.
But we look at old admin, where the academic portion, the administrative portion. What else? Because that was everything back.
Yeah,
when
the
the
president
college first
That was the
opened.
college. Yeah.
I think the president's office is where used to be where the education department is now,
Right.
where those offices are.
Yeah, it was in that
Sparks.
corner.
Yeah.
And Sparks and Kreitz used to be residence halls.
Yeah, where we're in right now recording this, the basement of Kreitz Hall, which was a museum, and it's still engraved on the doors of the basement here, a museum. And then recreation on the other one. I don't know what they did for recreation, though.
Ping pong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Table tennis. That's
Yeah, Sparks was. I think it was also faculty housing, and
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
so
that's
yeah,
what
so
it
it's kind of
said.
interesting all the history of the buildings.
Yeah.
That they're not their purpose now is not generally what it was when they were designed.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to have, just a plaque outside each door.
Yeah.
Say who's came before you, and that's always. I always thought, when someone retires, it's like they just all of a sudden they just disappear.
They're gone. Yeah.
And the freshmen coming in, they don't know that person ever existed, unless they had been on campus for some reason. But yeah, you have someone who gives most of their life to a place, and then all of a sudden they just don't exist anymore.
Well, they have to be distinctive enough that they leave those stories behind. And
Yeah.
say, you wouldn't believe what this guy did.
Yeah.
This guy he didn't get fired, he got canned.
He didn't have one office; he had four.
Yeah, his tradition. No, that's kind of an interesting philosophical question. What would you hope your tradition, what would you like to leave behind here at CSC?
Hopefully the Foom continues. And then I think the faculty and residents, I think that's a good deal. Hopefully that continues, and maybe we can expand it to other areas. For the most part, I think, I mentioned when I came here, it was the same year my daughter started college in Montana State, so we were both freshmen basically together. And the way I taught that year is different than the way I teach now because of that, because I started seeing every student in my class as my daughter. So I became the professor that I hoped my daughter was getting at college. And so that's kind of, I guess, how I'd like just that I cared for the students, authentically cared for them, and where they go in life is of an interest to me. Just who they are as people. That's kind of one of the greatest things about this job. I get to be a part of such a transition in their lives. They're moving from one chapter to the next. And as I tell them, they've spent most of their life up to this point being told who they are and what they're going to do. And now they get a chance to be who they, seek out who they think they are. And that may take several years if not forever, to figure out who the hell you are.
Do you have past students getting back in touch with you?
Yep. Yeah. Every once in a while I get an email from someone just kind of checking in. And usually you can kind of tell which students that's probably going to be just because they took an interest in the topic that you were teaching or the way you taught it. And so they get an email once in a while. I'm just checking in to see how things are going. And it's always nice to hear. And that prompted me to contact my professors that I had, because I had a student send me an email, and I was like, it made me feel good. So I'm like, well, maybe I should reach out to the professors that I was with at Northern State, that kind of watching them do their job motivated me to want to become a professor, just because it looked like they had such an enjoyable life. You get to learn about things that you enjoy and then share it with people that most of them want to listen, so I emailed several of the professors that I had as an undergrad, and they were all very glad to hear from me and catch up a little bit, because most of them had moved on from Northern since I was there. And I was trying to do things that I've asked the students to do. If I ask a student to do something in class, I'll do it myself too, I don't want to be hypocritical about it. Like in my aging and dying class, they have to have a senior partner. So I picked my mom. I asked her to be my senior partner, which took her about a month to agree to it. She wasn't too keen on being my senior partner.
A little wording issue there.
Yeah. My experienced partner.
Yeah.
But no, it's been great. And I think all the students, they really enjoy it too, because it gives them an opportunity to connect with someone that most of them pick somebody in their family, like a grandparent or somebody and it's somebody that they've been around their whole life, but they've probably never asked pointed questions to about aging and death and things like that. So it kind of gives them an opportunity to do that under the guise of academia. It's like, It's not me asking these questions. It's my professor that's making me ask these questions. And they all, it's basically a discussion-based class, which most of mine are. I give them assignments outside, and then I give them questions, and then when they come to class, we just discuss the classes. And that's the way most students are used to, being lectured at, so it's a little more work put on them. They have to talk during class rather than listen. So
that's good practice.
Yeah.
Well, they're probably developing really good critical thinking skills.
Yeah, and they rotate it, make sure they get rotated around so they meet everybody in the class, and so they learn to discuss things with their peers and to be more open-minded is the big thing. Because I have 3 B's that I make them do. And beginning of the year, I tell them to be humble is the one thing, to realize that you may not know everything, and to be able to accept somebody else's point of view and be willing to change your mind if they present evidence that supports that. And so I always tell them to be humble and be curious, always be a lifelong learner. And I don't remember what the other B is. Oh, be nice. That's my grandma's. That's her last thing. I was going up, be nice. So
now, most people might not know this about you, but you write a weekly column for your hometown newspaper, and it's called Ramblings, right?
Yep.
What do you write about?
Basically anything and everything. I started in 2006. It's the Burke County Tribune. I think it's circulated to about 5,000 people maybe. The town I grew up in is in Burke County, North Dakota. The town I grew up in is 150 people, so a small town. And so the lady that used to write the column, I don't remember what her column name was. She said she was retiring from it and was wondering if anybody wanted to write it. And so I emailed the Tribune and asked if they'd let me write a column. And so they emailed me back and asked me what I'd write about and how much I would charge. And I'm not a very good businessman because I responded back. I didn't know I was going to get paid for this. So I think when I first started, I got paid $5 a column. It's up to $10 a column now after 13 years. So 2 cents a word. But it's generally
double your pay.
Oh yeah. Because each column is roughly between 500 and 600 words. So it's the first and third Wednesday of every month is when it's a weekly paper. So my column, The Ramblings, comes out first and third Wednesday of each month. And like I said, so I've written probably well over 300 columns, I guess, for them. And some come easier than others. Some days you sit down and what I think I'm going to write about doesn't even end up being that by the time I get to the end of the column. But usually it's just things that I've experienced and I'll put, I guess it would be under the humorous genre of columns. But so I write about things that have been happening in my life. And had a lot more material when the kids were little, because when the kids are growing up, you always got stupid things that they're doing that are. So now it's probably shifted more towards
cocktail recipes.
Yeah, talking about aging and middle age, and like the one I sent you about the going to the Irish Fair and just little things that happen to you, and just kind of humorize it a little bit. And like I said, it's only about 500, 600 words, but sometimes that takes an hour to write. Sometimes it takes 3 hours to write that. And because it's due the first and third Monday of every month, and usually I don't write it until the first or third Sunday of every month. I'm a procrastinator.
Hopefully your editor is not listening to this right now.
At least you're a consistent procrastinator.
Yeah, as long as you make deadline, I suppose the editor won't care.
Yeah, I do till noon Monday. And there's sometimes where an idea will come to me, and I'll write it and send it to her a week early. But for the most part, it's usually a few days prior, and I'll spend the 2 weeks between generally thinking of. I think it's just part of being observational. You just always see things happen and add sometimes a fictional twist to something that's occurring.
Yeah, sure.
There's no reason that you have to be, completely accurate with them. So, and my readers recognize that maybe some of it's not, 100% truthful, but we're living in a post-truth era, so it's all right.
Well, maybe Daniel and I or the podcast will appear in the next Ramblings.
I wonder. I hope it's in a good light.
Yeah.
So I think we're down at our time here. We could do some quick hitting questions for you, Josh. So just top of your head sort of answers. Tell us a favorite movie of yours.
I like Forrest Gump, Angela's Ashes, Smoking a Bandit.
Oh, you can't go wrong with that.
That's a wide variety.
Good to have a broad taste.
Yeah, I like movies that are based on fact, but I also like funny movies occasionally. But Smoking a Bandit, I just remember from my grandfather, who was a woodworker. He took me to it when I was like 12, which I don't know why he took a 12-year-old to Smoking a Bandit. But I just remember him on his knees in the theater laughing so hard, just slapping the seat in front of him. So I was watching him more than the movie, because when you're a kid, you're only watching the car chases, and then you realize later that Jackie Gleason's a genius, because that's who my grandfather had grown up with. So he was seeing Jackie Gleason and with his non-script. He had no script for the movie. They just said Jackie being funny in the script. And
perfect.
So he ad-libbed the entire movie. So.
Oh, what a great memory. What's the first concert you attended?
The Oak Ridge Boys at the North Dakota State Fair, and was that 1982, I believe. It poured rain for the first hour, and so we sat in the rain, and it was me and my brother and my mom and dad, because my parents were both country music fans, so we went listen to the Oak Ridge Boys. I don't think they'd been around very long at that point, probably the early 80s. So, but I remember it was cold because it rained, and then we had to sit and wait for them to come out. They wouldn't come out until it quit raining. So,
the waiting game. So if it wasn't Chadron State College, what would you call this place?
Probably Faber.
Oh,
Faber on the Frontier, maybe.
Oh, I like that.
And get Bluto and the gang to show up. I actually tried visiting that place too, but it's been torn down.
What college was that?
Oregon State.
Okay.
In Eugene. Which one's in Eugene?
University of Oregon.
Yeah, it was on their campus. And I guess they'd approached Missouri State, and Missouri State told them, no, you're not filming a movie like that on our campus.
Oh, loss.
The Delta House has since been torn down. But
unfortunate. You're, of course, referencing Animal House, right? Okay,
yeah. Another movie I probably watched when I was much too young.
Just for those listeners who weren't aware of
the Faber College.
Maybe we could have another Animal House deep dive podcast.
I imagine so. Yeah.
Josh, how many times have you been to the top of Sea Hill?
Probably about 6 times, because I always hide the ammo box for my FYI class as their missions they have to do every other week. So I have an ammo box that I'll put instructions in, and then I give them a hint as to the location of the ammo box. And one of the locations is always Sea Hill. So, and I usually, classes, their missions are Thursday morning at 9:30, so I would go out Wednesday evening and hide it. I think last year when I went out, it was about 9 o'clock, and I got up towards the top, and I heard a couple college students that were, I recognized the noise as, a male and female college student getting to know one another, so I decided to come back later to hide the ammo box. So I was up there like 11 o'clock at night with a little flashlight. All I could think about was a mountain lion taking me down, and nobody'd ever find me up there because my clue hadn't been sent out yet. But
that's got to be a rough one.
Wait until the next Foom. Where's Josh?
that is our yardstick for keeping an eye on you. So we talked about Edna Work Hall, whether or not it's haunted, and but I really like this last question that Alex wrote down for you, an Irish folk song. And I always think, what was that name of that group that?
The Clancy Brothers?
No, the High Kings is the group that I've listened to.
I just
really
went
like
to see
theirs.
them last month.
Very good.
In Minneapolis, there at the Irish Fair, and I actually had a few pints with their lead singer, Finbar Clancy, when I was in Ireland.
Nice.
We went to the Clancy Brothers Festival, and it was all the cousins playing, because all the Clancy brothers are dead, but their cousins and nephews were all playing. And the pub across the street, we went over there afterwards, and all the cousins rolled in, and we had an Irish lockdown. They locked the doors. You can leave, but you can't come back in. And they sang until 3:30 in the morning, just one after another.
Fantastic.
Finbar walked in, and first thing he staggered in. And he goes, "Does anybody have a guitar?" And someone handed him a guitar, and he played for like 3 hours. It was the most amazing thing ever. And just one person after another would pipe up and sing a song, and you didn't dare speak if it was a female singing a sad ballad. You didn't make a noise at that point. But no, it was probably one of the best experiences I've had, and especially in Ireland. I mean, it was a blast. And then finally, about 3:30 in the morning, the pub owner, he's like, "It's 3:30. Have you no shame? Go home." He kicked everybody out.
Could you sing us an Irish song?
Oh, sure. A sad one? I mean, most of them are sad. But
I suppose so.
There's some sad ballads. There's some that you can swing a pint to. But I guess we could do the Parting Glass. That's it. Parting Glass is one of my favorite ones. The High Kings do a version of it. There's a little peppier. But basically, it's a song that they usually sing at funerals. It's called the Parting Glass. And it's sang from the point of view of the deceased, basically.
Okay.
So set it up a little bit.
All right.
All right. I don't know about this, but give her a shot. For all the money that e'er I've spent was spent in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done Alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. For all the comrades that e'er I've had, who are sorry for my going away, and all the sweethearts that e'er I've had, who would grant me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call, good night and joy be with you all.
Fantastic.
Well done. Yeah. Great job, Josh.
Oh, thanks.
I'll swing a pint to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was more of the sad ones, but yeah, I used to, when I was in Rapid City, we had a group called Donnybrook that I started. It was basically we'd get together once a month and sing Irish songs, and it was fun. We haven't done it for years now. I thought about starting it on campus, but I don't know who would be interested. But
We might have some takers.
Yeah, we might have some takers.
Some Donnybrook.
Yeah.
Because Donnybrook means free for all in Ireland, basically.
Okay.
So I thought,
Yeah.
we used to do it in Rapid once in a while. So I've always thought about giving it a shot here, but I want to tread on the toes of any of the English professors or the music professors, you know.
No. We're all one big happy family.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Josh.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. It was fun visiting with you guys. So good luck with your podcast.
Well, you're welcome anytime.
All right.
Thank you. And that's all from us.